Hi, welcome back. In the last part we went over the construction of these handles, so I've just taken the liberty of placing them around the chest. Also, I built another set just to show you what it would look like if they were a little thicker, and I built a final set just with more strands on it. So I'll include all three with the tutorial. They're pretty easy to build, but I thought, as soon as we have them, you can have a look at them and use them in your own projects, do whatever you want with any of this stuff really. So before we put this to bed, because as you can see, it's pretty well finished now, our cabinets are looking rather handsome, I think. There are a couple of little things we need to correct. So I made this trim a little narrower, if you'll remember, which has left us with a slight problem here that our trim is no longer sitting on the leg base. So if we just go to vertex, I can sort that out quite easily just by selecting these vertices here. Whoops. Let's try that again, shall we? Just select these verts, turn off soft selection because we don't need it, and just push it up a little bit so they're kind of sitting on the lip there. Okay, and when I smooth now, you'll see that my leg is pretty unaffected. Alright, so you might need to come in and do a bit of tweaks depending on whether you decided to also scale this a little thinner. And I want to just talk about finishing off this little cupboard that we made, because now we've got no trim, so we're going to have to add that. But also we've got a big gap here, so I want to put, because this is a bedside table, I want to put a little magazine shelf or something on there. So I'm just going to first duplicate this trim and add it to this piece. Let's just get that approximately lined up, and that's about right. So now I've got this trim, but it's still, again, I could do the same trick with selecting these vertex and moving them up, but I actually want to use this to put a magazine shelf on. So as I look at this kind of leg arrangement we've got here, I need a lip for this to sit on. So I can come in, and I think I'd make this trim even maybe a little thinner. Let's just try that and see what it looks like, because this is a very small piece, so I think it would have a smaller piece of trim on it. Okay, and again, it's down to you. I like to create sort of subtle little differences, so these legs here will be a little higher than these because of that shorter shelf. These legs will be, a little different. So just subtle differences between the pieces can really help to sell it sometimes. But I need a lip for these to rest in. So I'm going to insert edge loop, and I'll put one sort of here, and maybe that's a little high up. So I'm just going to press 1 so I'm not seeing the smooth preview. So one sort of there, and actually we've got another one there. So if I go to face mode now and select this face and just bridge across. Alright, I get this little lip created. So that's more than enough when we're shooting this piece to make it look like this trim is actually resting on a leg. And if I hit the smooth preview, you can see that's still looking good. Alright, so you'll need to do that all the way around. Just give yourself something to rest on. And if you wanted to, you could always have taken the bigger of the faces. So let's just back to object mode. So you can always come in as well and take these inside faces here and just bridge across there as well to give yourself, two pieces to sit on. Now if you wanted to, you could come in and kind of join these vertex together, but really for me, I just want to give the illusion that it would be resting on something, so we don't see it just sort of floating in midair. It's a small detail, but sometimes they're worth adding depending on which angle you shoot the furniture at. Alright, so now quick magazine shelf. So I'm going to start with just a polygon cube. Okay, and I'll just move this roughly into position here, and I'll just scale it up a bit. Okay, it's probably a little thick for a magazine shelf. So if I jump into the 4 view, I'll be able to see this a little better. And that's a little bit too wide. Okay, so let's have a look on the model. So we've got now a little shelf that's resting on this L-shaped cutout here. Perfect. It's still a little too thick. And down a bit. Alright, now that's fine as far as it goes, the little magazine shelf under there, but I'd actually like to get that a bit more decorative. So, you know, and eventually I'll probably end up smoothing it, which if I do right now, will just turn into a big circle. So we need to put in some edge loops to control that smoothing. So just pull that out and insert edge loop. And let's just throw in a few edge loops here to make sure it doesn't smooth into a circle. Let's get one there, and do the same for these sides. Okay, and we should have some edge loops to control the smoothing on the sides here as well. So, okay, so when we smooth this piece now, you'll see it actually smooths nicely. It doesn't turn into a big circle, so that's perfect. But also I want to give this sort of a decorative lip, so I'm going to place an edge loop roughly in the center here. Okay, so roughly about there, and another one. I mean, you can take some time and use the grid to line this up perfectly, but that'll do for me. Then I'm going to select the vertex at the front, hit B for soft selection, and just pull this out. So it creates a nice attractive shape. And again, vertex, and just pull it out. It's just a little more interesting than having just a square underneath the table. Now, another thing I wanted to do with this was cut a bit of a, as we did with the trim, when we cut this sort of decorative edge into it, I want to cut a decorative edge on the top of this. So in order to do that, I'll have to use more edge loops. So let's go edge loop. And let's put one there, and this will be the channel for our trim. Just turn off soft selection because I don't need it. So one there and one approximately there. That's a bit wide. Okay. Actually, I'm just going to have to put that in again. Alright, that'll do. Okay, so now I've got this channel that can be cut around the edge here. So I'm going to jump into face mode and just select those. Actually, it won't let me do it that way, so I'm going to have to do it the pain in the backside way. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to extrude these in, same as we did for the lip here. So yeah, extrude face, and just push them down. Okay, and I'm going to actually probably need to put some more edges in to control the smoothing on that. Let's have a look. Yeah, as you can see, that's just a giant mess. So we now need to put in the edges to control the smoothing so this inner shape doesn't smooth out too much. So once again, insert edge loop tool, and we'll just put sort of one here, one here, one here, one here, and we're going to need some on the outer edge too, so let's make sure we have those. There we go. And did we get one over here? No, we didn't. Alright, now when I smooth, that should be slightly better. Alright, perfect. So now we've got this sort of decorative channel cut in the top as well, which is quite nice, I think. And now we can move this back into position on our little table. There we go. And of course you might want to take some time lining that up perfectly. There. So now we've got a magazine shelf that sits on this little lip. We've got a trim that sits on this little lip. And you know, you can take a bit more time over the placement of all these things. But I kind of like that, gives another little dimension to our little piece there. Somewhere to shove your you know, book or whatnot when you're in bed. And I'm going to take the top now, and as I think I demonstrated the principle of bowing this top out, which is the same as we've just done with the magazine rack, but let's go ahead and actually do it. So again, very simple, just take the vertex from the front, B for soft selection, and just give it a pull. Okay, so I'm just going to do the front and the sides. The backs of these things are normally straight. And there we go. It just helps to create a more interesting shape than just a square. And now it matches the magazine tray. Alright, so that's pretty much done for these three, slightly different pieces of furniture. You've got your slightly different leg sizes going on, you've got your different heights and your different widths, and in our case different handles. One last thing I just want to go over before we call this a day is just how I've organized these, because if you look here, I've got my narrow chest of drawers and my long chest of drawers all nicely grouped, and this one actually is grouped in the wrong place now. Okay, let's just pull that out. Alright, so if we look at my group, I've got it into the main body, the trim, the top, the drawers, and the legs. And you notice when we click the drawers, the drawer handles are also selected. This is because the drawer handles are parented to the drawers. Alright, and the reason I've done that is if I quickly go for a shot and I want to pull open a drawer, this way the drawer handles come with the drawers. Okay, so you're not constantly adjusting loads of stuff. So I will show you how I did that. It's actually really simple. Okay, so first things first, let's just group this all together. So select all of its geometry and press Ctrl G. This puts us in a group, and I'm going to call this bedside table. Okay, so now I've got my group, center the pivot. Let's have a look here. We can do it with our tutorial shelf. And if I wanted this pivot at the bottom of this cabinet, which I pretty much do, that means if I need to scale it in the scene at the moment, the legs will end up going through the floor. So just in case, I like to put their pivot point at the bottom. So let's jump into the foreview. And let's just hit Insert to move the pivot, and then X to snap to grid. And let's just move that down to the center there at the bottom. So now if I were to scale, and let's just reselect that group in the big view. So now if I were to scale, it just scales upwards and the legs stay on the floor. It's a little thing, but if you're building these to reuse in scenes, then every little bit of time saving doesn't go amiss. Okay, so now we need to parent the drawer handle together. So what I'm going to do is select this drawer handle here and give it its own group, because it's in different parts at the moment. So Ctrl G to just group that handle together. So handle, and actually we're missing a part. So if you do find you're missing a part, you can just middle mouse drag that into the group. Alright, and then I need to select this drawer. So I'll call it D01. Actually, no, I won't. I didn't like that for some reason. D01, drawer 01, and I'll select the handle, then I'll shift select actually control select the drawer, and then just press P, and that will parent the drawer and the handle together. So the handle is the main part of the hierarchy, and underneath parented to it is the handle. This way, when I grab the drawer, and I'll have to just center the pivot on that drawer and move it about, the handle comes with it. Okay, so now we've sort of connected the handle and the drawer together, so it will always move together. Alright, so if you look at my sort of narrow chest of drawers, I've actually gone through the trouble of renaming all this stuff, which I believe I previously said is quite important if you're going to be handing the file off to somebody else. So you might want to take the trouble to do that. Okay, but for right now, we'll just leave it as is. Now, I already went over that I would normally save a working copy, so I would currently save this one as my working copy. And then I would go about exporting these individual pieces for my ArcBiz library. So I just take my chest of drawers here and go File, Export Selection. Now, before I do that, it's important to knock all the history off it. So let's go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. Because when I'm putting my final scene together, I don't want a whole bunch of construction history, clogging it up, using more RAM, making the scene in general slower. So let's just make sure we've got all the history deleted off that. it's in the center of the grid, and then File, Export Selection, and just export that out. I would normally export it out as a Maya binary. So you could then call this long chest or whatever you wanted. Okay, and this way I have a library of sort of a ton of furniture that all has no history on it. It's all perfectly sized and ready to be imported into a new scene. So I think that about does it for this piece of furniture, and we'll be back in the next part to build something else. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next part.